Hey guys, I'm Aleister,
And I'm Alseia.
and this is the Absurdium Podcast.
Hello, hello! This is our 5th episode!
Ooh,
I'm
crazy
so
number
excited!
5. Yeah, we're
5
really
is a great
trucking
number.
along. It is a good number.
I don't know why it's a good number, but it's just a good number.
Yeah, it's not a round number, but it is a good number.
It sounds nice. 5.
Mm-hmm.
The word 5 itself seems round.
Yeah, there's like a decent consistency to thinking that you've done something 5 times. It's different than 4 or 6, but it's not quite 10.
It's literally half.
True. Yeah, it is half of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess it's probably something to do with the fact that we have 5 fingers.
You know what? I never thought about number 5 deeply.
Well, here we
Ever.
are. That's what we do here.
Think.
We think
And
about new
then-
ideas deeply.
What a cameo. What an Easter egg.
Speaking of, what are we talking about today?
Ideas.
Unique ideas, novel ideas.
Just ideas in general, I suppose.
Yeah. And the concept of whether or not it's possible to have a unique idea nowadays.
So, Aleister, tell me, what is an idea?
Well, an idea is commonly referred to as a thought or suggestion as to a possible course of action or a concept or mental impression.
Oh.
Does that fit
Wow.
with what you imagined it would be?
It's interesting. I don't think I've ever thought about the definition of the word idea.
Right, it's one of those just common words that you just use and don't really think too much about.
Yeah. I suppose it's so. I actually never thought about defining it. So,
Right.
like any other word, it's more of a concept to me rather than a specific definition.
Right, yeah.
I know we I hope it's consistent, right? That we gave a definition of our topic every single episode, right?
I believe so. I don't know if we did with the ocean.
I think I did mention what ocean,
But
well, at
that's
least
kind of-
what sea was.
Yeah, I think that was close enough.
I mean, we talked about the ocean, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. So ideas.
yeah.
We're talking about ideas.
ideas. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Right.
Well,
Ideas are very interesting.
did you know that Plato was one of the first philosophers or ancient philosophers who put his philosophical and scientific ideas unique to the time probably
Mhm.
into written text.
I did not know that. But
Now
I
you
do.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Now you do.
The more you know.
The more you know. What a wonderful world. You know what? I kind of realized just right now that almost every single topic we touch upon, Plato is part of it
It does kind of seem to be
to some degree.
yeah, it's kind of an interesting trend.
Well, assuming that he was one of the first scientists and I mean philosophers, and we know that science comes from philosophy because philosophy is what you think, the ideas, right? The observation of the world, and science comes from there because if you don't observe it and then you didn't notice it to begin with, you don't know what to study and explore further
Right, yeah.
to explain how the processes and what you observed actually work. So it makes sense that we talked about so many different things and they all come from some kind of scientific discovery and observation or observation period. It doesn't have to be scientific
Right.
specifically, just in general, some kind of observation.
Yeah, which all rolls back to the ancient philosophers. They were the ones that started the whole thing.
You can probably say that they had very unique ideas. I'm sure, well, we can never claim that no one else never thought about the same things, but we know that they were one of the first ones who actually put it in paper, so we have factual evidence of it.
Right.
So it's not just, oh, he, she, her saying, you know.
I mean,
Hearsay.
you can tell that some of it was very, very new thought at the time because some of them were actually like imprisoned for it.
Yeah.
So
Because at that time, that was, I think, against religion.
Yep, it was questioning the church basically.
Well,
So-
wait, at that time there was no church.
No, there was.
But
There
I
was back
mean,
then.
not in the sense of what we see now.
Right, yeah.
Because
not-
if we're talking about ancient Christianity, it didn't exist yet. So we're
Right.
probably talking about temples for
Well-
different gods.
Well, Plato and Aristotle and them, they were Renaissance, weren't they?
Were they?
I think they were Renaissance era.
Really?
Yeah.
Why are we calling them ancient then?
I mean, that's ancient by our standards.
Do you look it up when they sort of lived? Was it really true during Christianity?
I think so. Yeah.
Wait, no, it cannot be.
I'm pretty sure it is.
What? Am I this uneducated? Wow. Wow.
424 to 348 BC.
That was before Christianity. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that is what the BC stands for.
Yep.
Fair.
So they are way before that time.
How about Aristotle, though?
Aristotle was a student of,
Also BC.
yeah, of either Plato or Plato's student.
Right. Well, I guess I'm wrong.
Thank God.
How would you be able to cope if I was right?
I don't know. I was like losing my mind. I'm like, I cannot be wrong. Not about that.
Right.
Well, no, seriously, because if you call something ancient, you're not presuming that it is hundreds of years old.
Right.
You're assuming it at least a couple of thousand, which is before the Christ.
Right, yeah.
Which is only 2,240. I mean, 2,024 years. 200. Oh my God.
We're not that old yet.
I mean, not yet. But yeah, so, and I know now and before for a fact, well, now for a fact and before with 95% certainty that they were way older than that.
Right, yeah. So they were going against...
I don't even think they actually went against anything.
Right.
I think Galileo probably did.
Right.
Because
maybe that's what
I think that's what you were thinking about.
Yeah.
Because Galileo is, I think, even past medieval times for sure.
Right.
Because he was the one who introduced the idea of it being us having planets.
Right.
I think.
Of us not being the center of the
not,
universe. Right. Yeah.
Because he observed the sky. If I'm really wrong and I'm butchering my facts and it's not him.
That's right.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, he was not viewed very welcoming with his novel and unique ideas.
Right. Which is not quite accurate to the point we were making, but
I mean,
still.
His idea was still very much novel because he was one of the first who introduced the idea that we revolve around the sun and not other way around.
True. Which was a unique idea.
Well, yeah, because we didn't know about that until then, right?
Right.
I don't think people ever really cared much. So, I mean,
yeah, it was
an average passerby probably did not care.
Yeah,
the philosophers and the scientists probably cared, and religious people too at that time.
Yeah,
probably cared very much about it.
But the average person just going about their day.
Yeah, I'm sure they just wanted to stay out of trouble, live in peace, and be happy.
Right.
And they knew that having controversial ideas like that would not provide the life that they wished for.
Oh, we don't, the universe doesn't resolve around us? That doesn't change that I have to make dinner tonight. So,
yeah. But what do you know about ideas and how unique they are?
Not too much. I mean, I have a little bit that I looked at. I know that, generally speaking, it's pretty hard to come up with a unique idea nowadays.
Why?
Everything's kind of just been done. It seems like.
Everything? What are you talking
about? Music doesn't really, you don't really see any new experimentation with music nowadays.
What do you mean by experimentation?
Well, there's no such thing as a new sound, really, it seems like. It's the same, 13 notes in an octave? Everyone just uses the same notes to make things. No one's coming up with new notes.
Actually, I was thinking about it, and I suppose it's harder, but I've noticed that a lot of artists started using sounds that are not originally musical.
Yes, this is true. Yeah.
So technically there is always new sound that is being utilized.
Right. I guess that's
it's still the same notes.
Right,
because
but it's just
the sound is still going to be the same note.
Right.
But the sound itself is different.
Yeah.
So I feel like
I was actually going to mention that when I was doing my reading for this.
Mm-hmm.
I have a certain playlist I play on Spotify,
Mm-hmm.
and it's music without vocals, and I've been listening to the same group for years at this point.
So instrumental.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it instrumental, because that's kind of the point I'm getting to, is at least in one of their albums, I'm fairly certain they used Windows error sounds. It's like, you know, you ever click a button on Windows and it gets mad at you and does like the bong or the whop.
Yeah.
They used a bunch of samples of that, and then they fed it through like EQs and special effects and whatnot to turn them into music.
I feel like for me, music that doesn't have lyric is instrumental.
That's fair.
But again, I suppose it comes down to what do you identify as instrumental to begin with.
Right.
Are you talking about the traditional musical instruments, or are you just defining it as simply sound?
Right. I think from an actual music theory standpoint, when you're talking about the track itself with no lyrics, it is referred to as instrumental. So just because there's an absence of an instrument doesn't mean it's not instrumental. That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the notes themselves cannot be expanded because our human ear can only hear so much of a range.
Right, yeah, only certain frequencies.
Yeah.
Same
and
with
so,
light.
Yeah,
It's a
and
similar
so going
concept.
out of that range will just be impossible. Like, yeah, we can probably create some sound that will affect dolphins or bats, but what's the point if we, as consumers of such sound, will not even be able to perceive it?
Right. Or if we do perceive it, it'll be in a weird way. Like, you know how certain frequencies,
Yeah.
like, the body reacts, but you wouldn't exactly call it sound.
But also, if someone creates a piece in a frequency that we cannot hear, how do you know if it's actually a piece, or
Right.
how do you know if it's even melodical in any way?
It wouldn't be.
I don't
really.
think so.
I
No.
think there's a difference between a melody and a sound.
Well,
So,
yeah, because melody still needs to have some rhyme to it.
Yeah, there's a whole...
Just like poetry, it needs to have something.
Right, there's a whole purpose to it and all that. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just incoherent sound making.
Right.
Mm.
Speaking of all the notes and melodies and whatnot, do you have any idea how many different like permutations?
Permutations?
How many different permutations given the 13 notes in an octave? Like the permutations of different unique melodies that can be created out of them?
Out of how many notes?
It's 13, right? Is there 13 notes in an octave? I'm pretty
No.
sure. No? What is it, 8? I guess I don't know.
It's actually 8.
8? Okay. Where am I
Do,
getting 13 from?
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. Well, actually, it's 7, but if you count the next do,
Gotcha.
like if we're talking from do to si, that's 7. If we're including do, that's 8.
Right. Huh. Interesting. I
So-
don't know where I got 13 from.
7 notes.
Huh.
7 notes.
Fair enough.
I play piano, so.
I don't play any instruments.
Yes.
Although I'm trying to learn guitar very slowly.
We're trying. We're doing our best. I mean, when I say I play piano, I took a class
Right.
in college to play
Fair.
piano. That's the extent of my knowledge of piano.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I feel like in music sense, definitely we probably would count not the notes but the sound of the notes,
Right.
because that's what makes it unique. Because again, we can only hear a certain range to begin with.
Yeah.
You cannot go out of that range.
Mm-hmm.
You just physically can't, unless we evolve to hear extra sound, and then we can expand on our creativity in music. But right now we have to have what we can
Right. Yeah. As we stand.
actually perceive. But I think what makes it unique is actually how different sounds are utilized.
Right.
But also modern pop music doesn't even require complexity.
True.
It just requires like 4 octaves, 4 chords at most.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of notes, it change them up a little bit, add a cool beat, and that's your song.
Yeah, it just has to be catchy. It doesn't have to be complex.
Yeah. Pop music is not necessarily famous or expected to be complex in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they sample a classical piece, they still only used a little sample of it.
Right, yeah.
They cannot incorporate more than, I don't know, 15 seconds at most of. And I'm not talking about corporate copyright. I'm talking about just generally how complex classical music is. You cannot really put much of it into the song.
Yeah, it's hard to put like 15 seconds of something and then have it actually integrate with the rest of the melody.
Yeah, especially because it's made differently. It's not classical music. I mean, it's not pop music. Classical music is not pop music.
Right.
Duh. What a brilliant observation.
Wow. That was
so
deep.
Profound. Deep.
Yeah.
But no, what I mean is that because how complex classical music is and how not so much the pop music is, it's really hard to combine them coherently to make something nice sounding that's not gonna overwhelm. I think, didn't you and one of our coworkers shared an audio like a song combining something? And I was like, that's too much. Was it just our coworker who
was it like that AI thing where it's using AI to change?
No. I think it was me, you, our coworker, and our coworker shared a song that he was like, oh, it's a mix of this song and with this piece.
Maybe.
And then
vaguely.
I think it was two composers. Two classical pieces mixed together or something.
That's starting to ring a bell, yeah.
Do you remember now? Yeah. And he combined those, and those were not even pop songs being mixed with classical music. It was two classical pieces, two complex classical pieces being mixed together.
Yeah.
Do you remember now?
Yeah, and it was, they overlaid them and they kind of went well together.
I did not like it. Nope.
Right.
No. In my mind, it did not go together because both pieces are so complex on their own that mixing them together was a bit too chaotic and too much to listen to. Like, it doesn't matter if the song or a piece is complex, it still needs to be
needs to flow together. It needs to kind of
some classical pieces are not particularly flowy, but
they have a general
it still
theme,
needs
right?
to make sure it doesn't overwhelm to the point where it becomes noise.
Right, yeah. Like some of those songs we play in Beat Saber are just noise.
Well, yeah. There's not much melodical
it's just
melody to it. They're just like sounds and
it's an
like,
onslaught of audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not complex, so you can still listen to it. But that mix of those two particular pieces, I don't even remember what the pieces were. I don't remember the track, nothing about it. I just remember that it happened, and I did not like it. It was really hard on the ear.
Yeah.
For me personally.
Right. I don't know if I'd call you a purist, but you like your classical music to be kind of.
That's not true. Not true. I can listen to classical music in more modern variation and more of a creative way to express. I just want to make sure that the original piece itself is recognizable for what it is.
Right.
It can be changed, but it needs to stay recognizable.
Right.
Otherwise, you're sampling the piece.
Right. Makes sense.
But I am a little snobby about it.
Right.
I like my classical music being classical.
Right, which nothing wrong with that.
That's what a classical music to me is. It's classics.
Hey, you don't go out of your way to listen to the classical stuff just to have it remixed and sound not classical.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, unless I stumble upon it by accident and I really like it and I save the rendition of it. But other than that, I'd never seek it out on purpose. Never seek out remixes of classical music.
Right.
I do seek out the classical music itself, though.
Fair.
Wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Like, I'll seek out remixes of what I would call vintage music, but not classical music. Like, 70s rock type stuff.
Yeah. I feel like vintage music
concept.
is different because it's
not the same.
Classic. It's not symphonies.
Right.
It's not orchestra playing.
Yeah, classical at this point, it's kind of a piece of history in a way.
But I feel like anything is history. Even vintage music is still history too.
I suppose it's treated differently than the true classics like Beethoven and whatnot. So
I think it's because they played as orchestras or quartets.
fair.
I mean, we have bands now, but the sound is different. The intention is different.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. I don't think they even had a concept of like pop music. Obviously,
Right.
they didn't. They had opera,
Right.
and I feel like it comes from the way people perceived the entertainment. It was
Mhm.
uncouth to be loud and obnoxious and move your body too much. You were supposed to be graceful. You were supposed to be
Right.
sitting and
Respectable.
appreciating, enjoying. I am not saying that we don't appreciate or enjoy our music right now. I'm a big sucker for K-pop, for example.
Right.
I go to my K-pop concerts.
We just go about it differently.
But you are okay to be jumping around, singing along, being loud, expressing the excitement.
Right.
I feel like the way they expressed excitement back in the times when they created symphonies and orchestras, right? Created symphonies so the orchestras can play them, is that they would sit down and it was like to socialize, but socialize in like
Mm-hmm.
that aristocratic way where they would dress well.
Right.
And it also was targeted to aristocracy who had the time and the money to wear beautiful gowns,
Right. Yeah. It
suits, and go out of their way to attend an opera, a theater,
it was a way for the fancy people to kind of have a nice outing.
a ball. Yeah, to show
Yeah.
themselves, to appreciate good piece of music. Like
Mhm.
that's where the theater, ballet, art
Mhm.
galleries, and shows and
Right.
orchestras all came from, because they would sit down and appreciate it. Also, like they didn't have time. I mean, we don't have time now to
Mm-hmm.
really spend too much time, especially here in America.
Right.
Just appreciating a 25-minute orchestra.
Right. Yeah. It's like maybe we can go to a concert every couple months or something. We can find the time for it. But-
Although it's kind of ironic, we go for 2-hour concerts, but we cannot sit down and listen to a symphony that is 25 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you think about it.
But again, you're literally sitting down for
Right.
the orchestra
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah, it's-
theater or, I don't know, dance.
Right.
Whereas in a concert, you are moving. You're moving all the time.
Right.
So you're
yeah.
active participant of the concert.
Yeah, you're either dancing or shaking the light thing around or whatever you're doing.
Or singing along,
Yeah.
which you cannot do. I mean, you could dance, and that's where they made like literal concertos, which went for a while.
Right.
But yeah, it was only available to the rich during balls and concerts.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they didn't have the need to make it.
Right. It didn't need to be interactive. for one
Actually,
thing.
I'm very impressed by classical music, how they created it. They put so much feeling, emotion,
Mm-hmm.
their soul into it, what they thought about the world. Like you can kind of experience the character of the person
Right.
by listening to their compositions.
Right. Which, to be fair, you still kind of get that nowadays. It's just not as
I
common.
don't think
it seems like.
so.
It depends on who you're listening to.
Hmm.
Like obviously, all the generic pop bands, you're not really gonna get emotional feelings from a lot of their songs.
I suppose if we were talking about an artist who composed their own music and wrote the lyrics and then sang the songs themselves, yes, you can tell a lot by those people. But
Right.
but how many people actually produce their own songs from beginning to end?
Not that much in
Not
the
that
pop genre
many.
nowadays.
Not
which
that
is
many.
part of why I don't really listen to pop that much, to be fair.
I can be a little shallow about my music, so I don't really mind that.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just.
Oh, I don't think it's
yeah.
wrong. I have my moments to appreciate classical music, and I have my moments where I appreciate more of pop music, which I still don't understand certain pop music.
Right.
But I mean, we don't
Yeah.
have to.
mean-
Music is a unique taste.
Right.
There's nothing wrong in appreciating or liking or disliking anything
Right.
in music.
Yeah, what was coming to my mind as far as like being able to portray emotion and whatnot is, I doubt you've heard of them, but Audioslave, specifically Chris Cornell, the lead singer, he was really able to pour a lot of emotion into his singing. Which, to be fair, they were big in the 90s, early 2000s, so not right now, but still, that's like probably some of the most emotional music I've heard in modern times.
Well, when you say emotional, do you mean like you experience sadness?
Yeah, there's like a power to his words, to the lyrics he's singing, and how he delivers them.
But that's the thing. When say emotions towards classical music, you don't. It's not.
It's not lyrical.
It's not sadness. You experience so much more.
Right. Well, this is just one piece, to
That's
be fair.
true.
Yeah.
But usually when we talk about music with lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like majority of people can probably feel more of emotions in sad music because
Right.
how they, sing it and the lyrics. But not many songs invoke like joy or happiness or
Right.
maybe the way, for example, I feel like in classical music, my favorite composer Vivaldi, the Four Seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vivaldi and his Four Seasons, is that was his view, his understanding, his perception of the seasons translated into music.
Right.
So through music, you can hear how he perceived and heard thunder
Mm-hmm.
or snow or blizzard
Right.
or how fall or spring bloomed or withered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he put
Which
it
is
into his
such a
music.
unique perspective. I don't think any pop song or rock song or any lyrical song will give you that.
This is true.
That I can only experience it through classical music as of right now, because I don't really listen to a lot of contemporary compositions.
Right.
Because even now classical music is being produced and composed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
New pieces come
styles
out.
are
I
still
just
used.
haven't. Well, it's. I feel like there is something very unique to the sound of each time period that the music was made.
Right.
So right now it's a different sound.
Fair
It can be in a similar. Oh my god, similar realm. That's what I was gonna say. The letters got like mixed up and jumbled. It still sounds like 20th century, 20th, 21st century.
Right, you can just kind of tell.
And it's not bad. I personally usually go back to my favorite composers,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't really listen to a lot of modern compositions, but I'm
Fair.
sure they can deliver. Actually, that's not true. I listened a couple of like I think 9-10 years ago. Wow, that's been so long. I listened to a new composition by a young woman who composed a piece, and I was in church, and because they were presenting it, and just it had good acoustics, and so
Right.
it was not. I don't think it was a religious piece by any means. I think the name of it was Winter Bells,
Hmm.
and that piece moved me to tears.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. I don't even remember the sound of it. I just remember how beautiful it was. It was so inspiring.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Be kind of neat to hear it if you could find it.
I've met the composer. She was presenting the song.
Gotcha.
I mean the piece, and I think I tried to find it once and I couldn't anywhere.
Hmm.
So I don't remember.
Darn.
I don't even remember if my name of it is
Gotcha.
correct.
Fair.
So, but it was beautiful. I love classical music. I just don't listen to it very often.
Right. Fair enough.
But then what we already talked about music, but what about art, for example? What do you think about art being unique? Do you think there is still avenues to explore? Or is it pretty much now a remix of old?
Art's an interesting one. I don't know a lot about art, to be fair. I've not really been into art ever, whereas I am into music. So I kind of have a deeper understanding of the music stuff.
Mm-hmm.
By no means am I a musician or an expert or anything, but like art's not really my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like as far as different styles are concerned, we've probably done most things. Obviously, there's a difference between the style of like what type of paints you use, what kind of brush strokes you use, that kind of stuff, versus the idea of like the subject of your painting. I don't know if we've exhausted all the subjects, just because obviously new things crop up in the world every day. But those are all, I feel like, kind of just iterative. I don't know if they would actually be unique new things on their own.
Well, I feel like you make a good point of saying that the world is changing, thus the ideas keep, expanding. So maybe the topic of art can be, be unique because it happened in history but never was artistically or painted or otherwise creatively put together outside of history,
Right.
then it's still a unique piece of art. But maybe the means that you make that art will not be very unique anymore.
Yeah.
Unless we create other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose it also comes down to, what do you consider art? Do you consider art as just painting, drawing, and using, what's the word I'm looking for? Pigment of some kind? Or are we talking about art utilizing every possible material?
I think every possible material. It's just, art is just a way of expressing
But
yourself.
then when you talk art, do you divide it by painting and sculpture and architecture? Or are you just putting one umbrella above it?
I think one umbrella above it.
Because I kind of separate everything.
Yeah.
Well, because if we're talking about art as painting or paintings, the things that you can hang on the wall or two-dimensional, right?
Right.
Is it two-dimensional? I think it's two-dimensional, right?
Technically speaking, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and three-dimensionals are sculptures.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course buildings, architecture too,
Right.
and design. I don't have any knowledge on design or architecture, so I suppose I actually, the thought just occurred to me. Architecture definitely can expand more in unique ideas. The more scientists find more new compounds,
Right. That's
and
true.
optimize ways of or structural integrity
Right.
of buildings. For example, if they tomorrow find like super glue of some kind that can hold cement together, and by that mean we can create like futuristic structures or like fantasy structures, that would definitely be very novel.
Right.
It would be not novel in the terms of idea of it, but it will certainly be very novel in terms of building it and and making it livable.
Right.
Or usable.
I mean, we've had something similar like that in the last 10 years with 3D printed structures.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of like humanitarian groups that have been over in, say, Africa, using these to 3D print tiny little, I don't know if I'd call them tiny, but, modular little houses for people to live in.
I don't think that's novel, though. I don't think it's unique. I think because it's still the same structure that we already had before.
Right, I suppose it's still a box.
I think the unique idea would be maybe creating something out of a fantasy book or a sci-fi book.
Right.
That would be novel, never seen before in architecture history.
Fair. Something
I think that
like,
will be true. I mean, as I said, the idea of it would not be unique because we would pull it out of some kind of story that existed. But it would be new to the world in terms of actual structure.
Right. I see what you're getting at.
That can be lived in if we're talking about architecture specifically, because architecture assumes it's a building that can be used. Otherwise, it's a sculpture.
Right.
Which is a totally different issue because you're not expected to... It's not expected to withstand a stress.
Right. It's not functional.
It's not supposed to be functioning either. Unless it's a piece of... your intent to make your sculpture functional, but yet it's still a piece of art, a sculpture, so it's never going to be used.
Like if you sculpt something into a column in a building or something.
Yeah.
No, I see what you're getting at. Like, say we were to somehow discover a way to make light solid and use that to build things.
Yeah. Or something, or maybe new compounds that are so light and so sturdy where we can make unique structures that way, like circular things.
Yeah.
Maybe it will even affect the furniture we have. It probably will. So that would, I think, has like an exponential potential to be unique, quite unique actually in the real world. We're not talking about 3D fantasy CGI thing. Okay, we're talking about actual livable buildings, usable structures.
Yeah, for sure.
Even pyramids were structured like usable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people went into them.
Right, or they were used as tombs or whatever.
So
Yeah.
they were still usable.
Right, fair enough.
In some way. Also, they were very structurally sound.
Oh, yeah.
It's a triangle.
Yeah, triangles
it's
are the
pyramid.
strongest.
It's like the most
Mm-hmm.
sturdy and reliable structure there is.
Right. Yep.
That's why they build bridges in triangular shapes, because it's like the most.
Yep.
Well.
Same as if you're ever trying to reinforce something. Like, say you have the chassis of a car you're trying to strengthen, you weld trusses in at a triangle pattern.
Mm.
Like, you've got the two frame rails of a car, and then you weld in triangular trusses.
Everything you just start. I lost you after car.
Fair enough.
You said car, and I'm like, that's the only word I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And triangle. And that was it.
Fair enough.
I mean, if I can have some sort of tiny little expertise in artistic thoughts, I certainly have no background in any automobile
Right.
world.
Which
And
is
then
fine.
there's also paintings, like, the paintings. There's this kind of paintings, okay?
Right.
Or things you put on the wall, not sculptures.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's potential for them to be unique? I don't think necessarily. How would I put it? I think both the way you create art and what you use to create art can be both unique.
Right. They're two separate pieces of the same coin.
But at the same time, is there anything yet that is undiscovered? And also, does the topic or the subject of the painting make it unique?
Right.
And if it does then it matter how it been, what was used to make that idea into painting? Like, I feel like painting in that sense is very
right. The topic,
multi-dimensional.
Yeah, the topic and the medium are at the very least unique from each other.
Mm-hmm. And then the execution of it also.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's say we have a unique idea of painting. Let's pretend a bowl of fruits is a unique idea. Mm-hmm. I know every art student is required to draw at least one bowl of fruits at some point. I did for sure. Mm-hmm. So let's say that's a unique idea. Mm-hmm. We assemble our pomegranates, the grapes artistically scattered about the table. Mm-hmm. And we decide to use fabric as a mean of execution.
Right. Like,
and
fabric
glue it or pin it, like actual fabric.
Right.
And fabric is the means of creating the painting, the bowl of fruit.
Right.
Maybe threads to identify the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Like the mean is fabric.
Right.
Or thread. And thread not in terms of embroidery. I'm talking about like gluing it on or somehow attaching it to the canvas.
Right. Interesting.
And so let's say the idea is unique and the mean to, wow, I lost my words. Put the idea into reality, also unique. But then someone uses the same idea, but uses a different mean.
Right. Is it completely unique? Or is it completely
unique? Is it partially unique? What would be at that point be original? Like unique thought. I think the original will still be what we created because it's truly like the original.
Right.
And that's what I think Mark Twain said. I read is that there is no such thing as an original idea because we all gather our inspiration from the world around us.
Right.
Which is not unique.
Yeah. See, I think there was a quote I read. It was like, was it Isaac Newton? It was something about standing on the shoulders of giants, I think is what it equated to.
That sounds similar to what I read at some point, but not about unique ideas.
Right, but it
sounds familiar.
It kind of is in a way, though, because it's like everything you see when standing on the shoulder of a giant, you're not fully responsible for.
Oh yeah, like Plato. He's the giant, and we're just building our science on top of it.
Exactly. So.
Which is cool. Thank you, Plato. We appreciate your efforts and your input into our everything.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, he is like the main subject of our discussions at this point.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can just we can make him an honorary third,
Yeah.
you know,
We need to
third host.
just get a bust of Plato to put over here.
We can assume this thinker sculpture is the Plato. Actually, who was this portrait after? Some anonymous man?
I'm not entirely certain. Probably.
And also, who created the sculpture, I wonder? Obviously, this is a replica. The original thinking pose man is, I think, in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not cool enough to have the original.
Also, it's much bigger, you know?
Yeah,
It's
huge.
much, much bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a really nice replica in one of the museums here
Yeah.
of Michelangelo.
Interesting.
It's in one of the churches.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That'd be neat to see.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
Right
Should
on.
probably visit more cultural places like that. Like
Yeah.
art galleries or stuff.
Probably.
It will expand your world.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's interesting how I think art is like music.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see what the person valued,
Right.
or
Yeah.
where their interest lied.
Yeah, they kind of speak through it a little bit in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's fair.
For
Speaking
example,
of,
you clearly, sorry, I interrupted, but
no worries.
one more point on art. You could clearly see the descent into madness of Van Gogh
Mm-hmm.
or Picasso, for that matter. They went from more structure to like chaos
Right.
over
Yeah.
time, and you could see their mental descent. Also, they weren't particularly mentally healthy to begin with. Their
Mhm.
life stories are actually very sad. If you
Right.
want to read on that subject, please do. It will be very interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
you can clearly see the progression, and I feel like that you can apply that knowledge to everything, like music, art, sculpture.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
See how the mindset of the person who creates all those things changes
Right.
over time.
Yeah. I was just gonna mention, as far as like new mediums that are kind of coming out for art. I don't know if you've seen, but back when the virtual reality craze was kind of coming out,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of like 3D
Oh
painting,
yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that.
which is probably in a way like a form of sculpting, I would think, but it was very unique looking.
I think I would consider it to be more of a sculpture because it is 3D.
Yeah.
I feel like the traditional art
Mm-hmm.
is
it's-
more defined as a 2D thing
Right.
that looks 3D oftentimes.
I think the distinction is probably that it's additive sculpting, whereas most sculpting in the real world is subtractive. So you start with like a block of stone and you chisel
Mhm.
away at it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in VR, you start with nothing and you add.
That's not true.
No?
No, modern sculpture and sculpture in general can be additive.
Interesting.
You get clay
I suppose, yeah,
and you add
clay.
it together.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
I think-
also why I suppose VR art is hard to consider traditional art. Well,
Mm.
there's nothing traditional about it except being creative, but
Right.
you cannot display it.
That's not entirely true either.
But you have to have have a VR set to appreciate the art.
Not true. You could have it 3D printed.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just you save it as a certain file type. You don't even have to have the 3D printer.
Oh, I did not think about that.
Yeah, you can just send it off. There's plenty of shops online that you just send them a file and they'll print it out.
But then the point, what I was thinking, oftentimes they use effects
True.
that cannot translate into 3D printing.
Right. They'll have like smoke or something.
Or it's neon
Mm-hmm.
and not color, but like the
Right.
that light, like lightsaber thingies, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of light,
Right. Yeah.
which does not translate into. I mean, you can make it. If
But
you get
it's-
plastic, you bend it, you add light inside, and that's what. But you
it's
cannot.
extra effort.
It's extra effort, which you have to do in real life. You have to create it with your own hands, and not
Mhm.
3D print it.
Right. Yeah.
So I suppose if it's something simple, and within the means of color scheme that is provided in 3D printing,
Mm-hmm.
you can create something but it's not going to be unique at that point then.
Right. That's true.
I suppose the way you created it is unique, but the idea is probably not,
Right.
because you cannot create something so complex where 3D printer is going to lag and it won't show the depth or the what you intended to show.
That's fair.
So I know modern sculpture like oftentimes it incorporates so many different materials, and it has such interesting depth to it that I don't think pretty 3D printer would be able to, properly produce something of that.
At least not the type you'd be able to have in your house. Anyways.
Oh yeah, and I don't think the size of it would be appropriate either.
Right, yeah.
So you can definitely showcase it, and I suppose you can show it like on a monitor, for example, as a visual, but then it's gonna be 2D.
Right, yeah.
So I feel like the point of it being 3D will be lost.
Yeah, you lose a lot of depth that way. That's fair.
So it's a specific niche that can be only appreciated by a very specific group of people who actually go seek that out.
Right. Which is still a unique concept.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's just the execution is a little lacking for the normal person. So.
But also, I think just because the mean is unique doesn't mean the creation itself will be unique.
Right. Fair. Yeah, because you can make a 3D Mona Lisa and it's not going to be a unique thought.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's unique, what the definition in this case, that's not actual definition of the word unique, but it needs to be original, unheard, unseen, or somehow otherwise manifested in the world.
Right.
That's what unique and original means in that sense. To me, that's how I understand that.
Fair. Okay, here's an interesting question that just popped into my head. Say we take two people, right? And for the sake of the convenient narrative, they're not existing in the same time period.
Okay.
Let's call it the 1700s, so then we don't have the assumption of like the internet and easy proliferation of whatever they come up with.
Okay.
So we have two different people, different sides of the world, different time periods. One's 1700, one's like 1723. Let's just say it. They both independently come up with the same unique idea. One first, the next later. There's no way for
that. Oftentimes happens.
Yeah.
In science, actually.
Right.
I feel like how Mark Twain or some other, I think it was Mark Twain that I read the little paper on. Wow, I sound so educated. Wow, I'm impressed by myself. Is that why he doesn't consider ideas unique or original in any sense is because they're literally flying in the air. You just have to grasp it.
Interesting.
So I feel like those people who have unique ideas simultaneously, unique to the time period, space, and whatever, never seen before, is because they observed something that brought them to the same conclusion.
Gotcha. Interesting.
That's how science, like, you observe.
Right.
That's the same with art and sculpture and something. You somehow came to the conclusion of that idea.
I could see that.
So that's why there's no unique thought. There's no unique, truly unique idea, because someone somewhere somehow thought about that, but maybe not actually acted upon the idea or executed it.
Right. And just the fact that thoughts are generally reactive to external stimuli. So
maybe they thought about similar things or had similar experiences, or somehow something led them to have similar thought that then developed into the idea.
Right.
I'm sure if Galileo didn't exist, someone else would come up with gravity, or Newton, Sir Isaac Newton.
Right, absolutely.
They would observe the falling of an object, and they will, why is it falling? Why is everything falling down?
Yeah, someone would ask the question eventually.
About the mass and the gravity, and how mass is in relation to gravity.
Yep.
And stuff like that. Larger mass means...
True.
Creates more gravitational force.
Yep.
Physics.
I love physics.
So I think that's what brings similar unique ideas. They're like maybe in a span of like 40 years. And I think also there might have been a catalyst to the idea too. Maybe some new invention or a new discovery that fueled those people with a new experience and new understanding of something, of some kind of subject.
Right.
That brought them to the idea at some point. Maybe they read the similar publishing. Maybe there was a book or a work of something that was published or somehow was accessible to them, and they, you know, discovered something new. And if we're talking about 1700s, plenty of things were new.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything was kind of like...
That was the Industrial Revolution. Everything was new.
1700s?
I think it was. That was like the beginning, wasn't it? The late 1700s.
I think it was late 1800s, beginning of 20th century. That's where the Industrial Revolution started to happen, with the creation of the steam. I mean, it depends what kind of industrial revolution you're talking about, but my understanding of the word industrial meaning a little more modern, like late 19th, beginning of 20th century. The creation of steam.
I think the creation of the printing press was technically heralded as the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Interesting.
Right, which by that point, I'm pretty sure the printing press already existed by the time the United States was founded.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
So I think technically the late 1700s is probably Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
It wasn't full steam ahead, pun intended, yet, but...
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it just was something brought them, experiences and thoughts brought them to the creating the idea. Fair. And executing it too. Somehow bringing it alive into the world. It's one thing to think something, and another thing to bring it alive.
Right.
For example, we can think about, I don't know, writing a book, but if we'd never write a book about the story, someone else will write this similar story.
Right. It might not be identical, but it
doesn't mean that
eventually.
They stole our idea from our brain and like read our mind and just wrote the story. No, someone grasped a similar idea from similar experience, reading something or experiencing something somehow.
Right.
And they just decided to actually use the idea or the thought that they had. True.
You know, interesting tangent that just popped into my head again too. Going back to the whole printing press thing being the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It's kind of funny that the concept there is that the printing press enabled the wide spread of ideas written on paper that other people could see.
I can see that. Books, which another creative outlet for being unique and not. I feel like it's interesting. In my mind, books are divided into two. And I'm not talking about fiction and nonfiction.
Right.
I'm not talking about nonfiction because obviously it's based on someone's experience, knowledge, or otherwise true, real thing. But I'm mostly concentrated on fiction. I think it is divided in two, is the interpersonal relationship and the actual idea and plot. I think interpersonal relationship will never be unique.
Right.
I don't think you can spin it because I feel like every experience and emotion that human has is been since the beginning of humans.
Right.
I don't think it's unique in any way. Like how they say, like, oh, but you don't understand my pain. I'm sure someone, someplace, somehow definitely experienced it. And so the human relationship and the emotions cannot be unique.
Right.
And will never be unique.
I think that's accurate.
But the way you build the plot can be.
Absolutely.
Because the idea of like the story itself can be unique, but the humans in them or otherwise other creatures, whatever, we don't discriminate.
Right.
Cannot be.
Right, yeah, because not everything needs to like follow the hero's journey, for example.
No, but even hero's journey is not unique anymore.
Right. Yeah,
it's been so much overplayed, overused.
Right.
It's almost like actually too much used. I think people should stop doing that.
Yeah, which to be fair,
I do like hero stories.
Yeah, nothing wrong with them, but they are just a little
nowadays, especially with all the like superheroes movies and comic books and stories and everything.
We need a
break, everywhere.
I think.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, it's gonna be the human emotion and relationship will always be recycled. There's nothing unique, impossible. I don't think, unless we all lose the ability to feel, then I feel like it will be a whole different experience.
Right, or if we evolve some new senses potentially.
I suppose, but then still, how they say the world changed, but people didn't.
Right.
Which means nothing really changed. Like how we express ourselves or how we build relationship is not. That's why we have a whole study of psychology. Build over
Right.
years because humans don't change.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you can evolve and become better. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that intrinsically,
at our core, we'll always
at
be...
our core as a species, we have certain capacity to feel,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not unique
Right. That's
to
fair.
one particular individual. One particular individual can be unique in the way they experience the relationship building or the lack of.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have like psychopathic or those kind of tendencies, those people have a lack of emotion.
Right.
Nothing wrong with it. If you're, you can, people like that can still live healthy lives. They just don't have the ability to experience things how average person does.
Right.
So maybe their outlook and the way they write a book would be a little bit more interesting, yet still not unique.
Right, yeah, because it's...
Because
not
that's
the only
lack,
one.
not... They're an exception, not the rule.
Right, yeah, that's fair. Interesting way to look at it.
Also, I was actually, while I was driving here, I was thinking about unique things. For example, there is a belief, I don't think you can scientifically prove it in any way, that would be kind of silly, but that every single snowflake is unique.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Of course, we cannot check that.
Right.
It will be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it is possible, why would you do that? But
right.
It's believed that every snowflake is unique, but of course not in the composition because it's all water. Well, maybe with some other minerals, if
right, but in the
pollution and
shape,
stuff.
that
But
they
in
take
but
and
in the
whatnot.
shape.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking, we as humans, we're obviously unique.
Yeah.
Our DNA is unique.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single human being is unique.
Right.
There's no disproving that.
Yeah, even twins, they
Even
have
twins,
variances.
they're unique. Yes, but I don't think our looks are that unique.
Yeah.
Because there's so many stories of doppelgangers.
Right.
Being born in different cultures yet still looking the same. Again, not identical.
But similar.
But similar, which already makes you not so unique. Because if
Right.
someone else there or was there that looked like you, even if not identically, again, as you remember, unique needs to be one of a kind.
Right.
Or first of its own.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always thought that there's like archetypes of how like facial structure looks and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's how you can like kind of distinguish different people from different cultures and countries, because they just look a certain specific way. But
Right.
even then, like my doppelganger can be born in Asia, for example,
Right, yeah.
or in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and we might not have anything in common except our looks.
Right.
I mean, I have
exactly.
dark hair, so someone can definitely be born like in, I don't know, Vietnam, that will look very much like me.
Right.
So even our looks are not that unique. I mean, they're unique to our immediate circle unless you literally run into your doppelganger.
Right, which is
And
dangerous.
it is believed that there are 6 of your doppelgangers in the world.
Interesting.
I don't know why 6. Maybe I'm just pulling it out of thin air, but correct me if I'm wrong. It might be less, but I think it was 6. I read it someplace, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Like, you know how there's doppelgangers of people who look very similar to like Angelina Jolie, Ariana Grande, Britney Spears,
Right.
Chris Hemsworth, like all the celebrities.
Yep.
So I'm sure there's plenty of people walking around the earth looking like us.
Oh, for sure.
Which will be easier to hide our identities if there are multiple of us running around.
Right. Wonder if they're wearing these same masks too.
Probably not,
Yeah.
because we only wear them for the podcast.
Yeah, that would be unlikely.
Luckily for us. I don't think I can handle wearing a mask every single day.
Yeah,
All
no.
the time.
No, having this thing on my nose all day would suck. So.
But yeah, and of course, I don't think science can have... Oh, no, that's not true. I feel like science is truly one field that it will always be unique.
Right.
Because every idea is unique.
Mm-hmm.
It means that some kind of new discovery was made, something new came up, something new was discovered, observed, or otherwise implemented through either observation in person or through mathematical,
Right.
you know.
That's the whole concept of progress in science. Yeah.
Yeah. All progress goes through science.
Right.
So that's interesting. Anything else you know about? I think my usual subject of interest are more artistic,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe you have something more about different ideas or some kind of idea about ideas.
Ideas of ideas. I wouldn't mind touching back on the music one a little bit. There was something I read. I think you touched on it a little bit about how pop songs nowadays, they don't really have much in the way of variance of the notes they use and whatnot. Like they all
Yeah.
use like the same 3 or 4 notes.
I mean, you mean chords?
Yeah, chords.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I did some reading. It wasn't exactly on the chords themselves, but about how music, say from like the 50s on to the 90s, they all had like key changes that would happen. And it was like a way to vary the music.
It's like do 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 da 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 do do da da do do da
Right.
da da.
Like you'd take, say, a G on a guitar and turn it into a G sharp or something like that. And then
That's
it
a
was.
different note already, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know much about music.
G and G sharp is already two different sounds.
That's not a key change.
It is.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's two different.
Right. Anyways, I clearly don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean,
but
those are two different notes. They're even like written down differently.
Right. Fair enough. Moving on.
I mean, I suppose it can be within the same octave.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, the word octave means 8.
Hey, that makes sense.
Octave, the root. Wow. Wow, it just occurred to me. I was thinking about octopuses and like octagons, and I'm like, octave, it also means 8. So 8 notes, not 7. So
Right.
I was right, it's 8 from do to do.
Fair enough.
So yeah, well, yeah, but I know that they changed like maybe at most 4 chords
Right.
back in the day. Nowadays,
Yeah. So what I was reading, it's the theory on it is that back in the day when you were composing a song, you had to compose everything manually.
yeah,
You'd do it either you'd write it on paper and then you'd play it and you'd kind of go through the process.
Yep.
And it was in order to kind of increase intrigue as the song progressed or to vary it up a little. Every time you went to a new, like, what do they call it? The sections of a song?
I don't remember, to be honest.
Fair enough. And let's just call it a block. Every time you took one block of music and went to the next block, sometimes they would change either the
Passage,
key.
Maybe passage?
Possibly.
I don't know. Maybe.
Right.
Again, one like class in
Right.
college.
Fair. But they were progressing through it linearly in a way that encouraged them to make these changes to kind of increase like the uniqueness of the sound. Whereas since the 90s, with like the increase in digital composition of music, like the way you lay out tracks in a digital music editor, it's a lot more of like a vertical type of composition where you just take little snippets of a song and you make it and then you just layer it throughout the entirety of the piece.
That makes sense.
So there's not as much room for like variation and whatnot.
Oh, unless you purposefully
Right.
sneak it in, yeah.
Right, which is why we see the same 4 chords being used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why classical music is so fascinating, because imagine writing a symphony
Right.
or like a piece for a full orchestra. You had to incorporate every single sound, every single instrument, and they sometimes play different parts, different notes
Right.
to make one piece. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Oh, I love it. Oh my god, I will probably drive back home listening to classical music. That is a lie. I'll be singing along to my pop music. I like to listen to classical music either when I'm going to actually purposefully listen to an orchestra performance or quartet performance. I like my classical music to actually go and listen to it, or when I need something in the background.
Right.
While I'm cleaning or just enjoying my dinner, which sounds so fancy, like you're having classical music and you have dinner, and so it sounds very fancy. But no, I'm just like, looming over my ramen to Chopin.
That's fine.
I need some spice while I'm listening to Chopin, because Chopin is not particularly spicy.
Right.
So I'm eating my Korean ramen noodles and like crying over while listening, because it's so spicy. And I'm listening to Chopin. Yes,
That's
love
funny.
Chopin. But yeah, I think that's pretty much on the ideas. And I don't think I know anything else about there. Are there any other ways to create new? Are there any other outlets where new ideas are? Well, I suppose fashion.
Fashion, yeah. I know nothing about fashion at all. So
I would say neither do I. But fashion is truly recyclable. I actually was thinking about it today.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of clothing is to either keep us warm, like actual utilizing the function of clothes, or cover our private parts,
Right, pretty much.
which doesn't leave much room to like
Mm-hmm. To express yourself.
to
really.
express yourself. So all the fashion is recyclable to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think definitely there are pieces that are unique,
Right.
but the silhouette of it probably is not.
Yeah, that's fair.
So maybe the design of the dress might be unique,
Mm-hmm.
but the dress itself, the structure of it, might not be.
At the end of the day, a dress is a dress is a
Yeah.
dress.
Yeah.
So.
Although, actually, not so long ago, I saw a very unique, truly unique fashion show
Mm-hmm.
where the designer made the dresses. So let's say, imagine a gown, right?
Right.
He would make it, there's a word for that I'm looking for that I forgot, but like a fabric sculpture of the dress,
Hmm.
and he would cut it out and put it like in a sideways.
Interesting.
So basically, the model is like in a gray-black dress,
Oh, I think I saw that.
but the dress itself is kind of like
Right.
standing like on the side or
Hmm.
slightly like crooked.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that go through the internet at one point because it
Yeah,
was so unique.
that was unique.
Yeah,
that was
that's-
truly unique idea.
That's properly never thought of before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe there is still a lot of things to discover, but that's the thing about unique and creative things. No one else have grasped that idea before,
Mm-hmm.
that unique expression before,
Right.
and we don't know that if we have it unless someone shows it to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of one of those you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility that there is still a lot of unique things to be discovered in fashion, art, and literature.
Right. It's hard
But
to pinpoint 'em.
until we actually presented with such a expression, we won't know.
Right. Yeah.
But also, in terms of fashion, I feel like fashion doesn't only need to be unique, but actually usable.
Mm-hmm.
How usable are those dresses?
Right. Yeah. You can't use it at work. How are you gonna fit through the door?
Yeah, it's a little hard to actually use it. I think I'm a little bit more practical. From the practical standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of unique fashion pieces are a little bit more extreme
Right. That's
on the
fair.
extreme side.
Yeah. They look,
Beautiful nonetheless.
yeah, they're fine on a runway, but if you're
Mhm.
trying to actually, live your life,
Yeah.
it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I suppose the only other example I can think of is like movies.
Movies.
You've got
yeah.
like experimental film genres and whatnot.
I suppose it
so-
also depends how the movie's created,
Mm-hmm.
the theme of the movie.
Right. Like you've got, I don't know if you've ever heard of a one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's,
I know about that.
I think that was probably unique at some point, obviously. Everything was unique at some point, but that was a fairly unique style of filmmaking. There's a movie I watched back in, I think it came out in 2015. It's called Hardcore Henry. It's a very violent movie, so don't show your kids if you have kids. But the concept is that it is shot entirely in first person.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the main actor, you never even see the guy. He's
Mhm.
got like some sort of camera rig on his chest or like under his neck or something, so everything he's doing is first person, like you're playing a video game, basically.
Interesting. Wow, that's a unique concept.
Yeah, it's, to my knowledge, it's the only movie that's ever been done that way. The entire movie was shot that way. It's like an hour and a half long.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's a very unique film. It didn't do critically that well.
Mm-hmm.
The concept was neat. The choreography was amazing, but the plot and the acting was kind of subpar, so it flopped a little bit.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
I think
So-
the budget was fairly low, so it still cracked a profit, but it wasn't like, a hit.
So I suppose if it's done with good actors and good plot, it would be a.
Yeah,
a
if
good
Spielberg wrote it
interesting-
and Tom Cruise was in it, it would probably be
Yeah.
amazing.
But then, if we're talking about unique, obviously silent movies were unique. No one
True.
does silent movies anymore because we have sound, but that was nonetheless unique because even in theater,
Mm-hmm.
you still heard the players
Right.
say the words. And in ballet, you had, which I think could be considered a silent film at that point, because obviously in silent film they still had music.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't know how to connect the sound.
Right. Yeah.
And so they just layered the music on top of the film.
Fair.
But also, their unique concepts was when in the movie utilizes one or two actors only.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire movie is based on one or two characters.
Right. That's fair.
I don't know at this point if the movie considered to be like one actor movie or two actor movie, if there are like couple of scenes with more people than one or two, or not, like for example Martian.
Right.
But no, that's not one. There's actually a lot of characters.
Yeah.
But let's say for example, this story was for example, that movie, The Passenger, with Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, how they were the only two on a spaceship.
Right. Yeah.
Those were just like three people playing.
Right.
There was also the butler. I forgot his name. He played Aro in Twilight, the ancient vampire.
Not something I'll know then.
Yes, the only reason I know, I didn't even recognize him in the movie, but it's because I was looking at it for that actor to see where he played, because he's apparently like super good and super famous. So I'm like, I want to read more about him.
Right.
And then I found out that he also played in Passenger.
Gotcha.
So I think that's the movie. That's the name of the movie. I'm not 100% certain, so don't quote me on it.
I've heard of it, so that makes me think it's true.
It's probably it.
Yeah.
I just don't want to confuse it with some other movie.
Right.
That is named Passenger, and I'm just mixing my things.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think another interesting movie, it's called Legend. It's about like mob bosses in England in like the 1940s. But the unique concept is that Tom Hardy is the main two characters.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're both on screen at the same time pretty frequently.
Well, I feel like that was a unique concept at once, but now it's been utilized a lot.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that's the first time it's been done, to be fair.
I've seen so many renditions of that idea.
Right. Like, it's a neat idea. I don't know what the origin is. This is the only example of it I know of. So, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose movies are a little trickier because I don't know. I feel like movies are oftentimes based on some kind of piece of literature.
Right. They're pulling a concept from somewhere.
So from somewhere, yeah. So by default, it's not unique. I think it's a unique way of expressing the idea and actually bringing it to life. If they're doing a movie based on a book, for example, or a story or an autobiography, it's unique in the way they express the story, but the story itself is not unique.
Right.
And of course, I feel like every movie is unique because it's talking about a different story and it's done differently. Even the same story, like let's say Cinderella, there are so many remakes of Cinderella.
Right.
Each one of them is unique in the way it's made.
Yeah.
Obviously, the story is not unique, but the production of it and the actors and the way they express the characters is definitely different.
Yeah, even if you had different actors act the same exact story, it would be different just due to how they act.
Just a bit different. At that point, I think it would still, no one
be
would
similar
do it. It would not, no one would do it because, like, why anyone would watch it?
Right.
But in that sense, every movie is unique because it will never be repeated again because, like, what psycho is gonna redo the same movie with the same actors with the same premise in the same way?
Yeah.
That's just why make a new movie, right? So every new movie by default is unique. It's not new though.
Right. That's fair.
So in this specific example, I think it's unique in the way that it's made the way it is, doing things the way they do it, but it's not new.
Right. Yeah. Everything that went together to make it what it is had to happen specifically that way. But yeah, it's
but
not
everything
a novel
else
idea.
has been already used.
Yeah.
The ideas of how to produce the film, the way they produce the film, the actors that they use, the story that they use is not unique.
Right.
Because there are only that many actors and actresses.
Yep.
To actually play. So yeah.
Fair enough.
I think that pretty much concludes our ramble on such a vague topic
yeah,
of
I'd
ideas.
say so. Yeah, I've not.
I'm clearly running out of ideas to talk about because we pretty much covered any outlet that would be creative in sense.
Right. I mean, maybe there's super niche things that we didn't touch on.
Please
but we
do
hit the
tell
big
us.
ones.
I would love to know like niche things that we haven't,
Yeah.
or things that we just didn't think about, because I'm sure we forgot something. But
Right.
it would be interesting even just to think about it, or maybe incorporate this subject into some other episode briefly.
Mm-hmm.
If that ever interests you, please let us know, because I would love to find something new or be educated on something that I never thought or never knew.
Right. Same here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you can find this on Spotify, Apple Play, and YouTube.
Yep. Please join us wherever we are.
Yes, we will leave links under. If you're watching the YouTube, we'll leave it under the video. And
Yep. Spotify has a description where we can put links
yes,
to.
we can put that too.
Yep.
But thanks, guys, for joining us today. And remember, be always polite, respectful, and open-minded. We'll be there, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.